Okay, I think we are now live.
Yes, hello.
Presumably it takes time for people to sort of join.
Yeah, I'm a little bit
Zoom.
off.
A little bit off that way.
Technology going, make sure we can
So,
hear.
so how do we tell when people have joined? It's working.
I don't know. But we can start saying hello to...
Hello, if anybody's out there. Oh, look, we got people joining.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It's exciting. I mean, one of them's me, just here, but...
Is it? Okay. Oh, one's gone again.
Oh.
Back on again.
I decided no.
So yeah, what's the time? We've got about a minute till 5 o'clock, so we'll let people join. Hello, people joining.
Yeah.
Welcome from Oxford.
Yes.
And we're just sort of killing a bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's dropped off again.
Yeah.
So
having a good weekend so far?
Weekend's been good so far. A bit cold and wet. But
it is.
Although we went for a nice walk in the sunshine while it was shining.
Yeah, it has been sunny today, but
yeah,
pretty windy as well.
Yeah.
I brought an emergency umbrella with me in case it started raining.
Very right.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. So you didn't turn up for dragons.
Exactly. So I'm gonna be careful about that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
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 But winter has definitely arrived.
It has.
I think.
Yeah.
Also,
for sure.
The most glorious year in British history.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is incredible.
Yeah.
What technology, if you have no idea. As a child, the idea that one could just sort of put up a camera and broadcast to the world.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been, people would have been just saying, oh, they'd be ridiculous.
Yeah. And look at it. So easy.
Yeah.
So easy. Just a little click and here we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping to get quite a few users. Sent out a message a few days ago. Should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we got just
first comment. Hello, Brandy. Yeah.
Hello, Brandy.
From Canada.
Yeah. Yay.
Hello. Thank you for joining.
Charlie in Canada. That's a cool name. Hello, Rebecca.
Someone has no idea.
She has no idea about what?
I don't know.
Okay, so for anybody who happens to be on our...
Oh, I get it. No idea about technology in the past and how it could have seemed so unfathomable to be broadcasting live. It's true. I have no idea, Rebecca.
Yeah. It could be that we'll find this still unfathomable as the...
Yeah, it's true. This could go horribly wrong.
But this is looking good. Yeah, we got people coming on. We probably should have gone like a little bit earlier so people got a little but I think you get a little beep on your phone, don't you, when somebody goes live? Yeah.
So it's building up. I guess we can say hello and
Yeah, so in case somebody just happens to be on the site randomly thinking, what is this live thing? This is going to be a gathering of parents and children who are on the Easyread system right now, who've been sending in questions over the last few days. Rather a lot of questions. So we've had to sort of pick some to answer live, and then we're going to I'm going to give an answer to all of them and share that over the next few days. But we will pick a few today and try and give the right answer.
Yeah.
It's
been a really fun few days getting them all in. So thank you. Sincerely to everyone who's sent one in. It's been really, really exciting.
Yeah.
Good.
We're thinking that we could maybe do some training over this system with time and other things. So this is a bit of an experiment, really.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to see how many people remember to join. It's interesting the way it sort of goes up and down.
Yeah.
You're able to see on here as well.
It's consistent with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe it's not completely accurate.
So there's a big lag between what we're doing here and what appears on the screen. So it's sort of really strange.
Yeah.
So we had a fantastic mix of questions, and we're going to go through a few of those, and then we got a couple of news items.
Yeah.
Beforehand.
Yeah.
And and then we've got some prizes. So stay online for prizes. But, so we've got like 15 people online at the moment. They can more or less do each of them a prize, I think. So we do like prizes.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, 15, and if everyone's watching and got some comments in already. Hello, back to Samuel in Huddersfield and to Emma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I can do reading the small print if you like.
yeah, that's right. I probably need glasses for this.
Yeah.
The what's the? Oh yeah, there's a. Yeah, you're gonna see me staring at the old man trying to read the small print. Yeah, good. And it's. So what's the time? Should we just sort of crack in?
Yeah,
with the game we got, because we are recording it, so we can put it up on
people will see it after as well, and got some people here, so that's
cool. So obviously, well, not obviously, but for those who are on the system, hopefully, obviously, I'm David, and I'm here with my colleague Lydia.
Hello.
Who's been.
I will have spoken to some of you. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's Saturday, the 8th of December. And we're doing this live broadcast to answer a few questions that are coming from children and parents on the Easyread system. And so for those of you on the system listening right now, and those of you who watch this in due course who are parents, I just want to say congratulations and well done. We just had a fantastic year. I was looking at the data on it, and we've had around about a bit over 2,000 children working on the system over the last 12 months. And from those 200-something thousand, we've had 4 who have sort of left the system unhappy. And that's amazing. And those 4, all for reasons I can describe, just sort of went without our helping it. But all the others have got to a good place. And that is because you've been working really hard on it. And so congratulations, it's really fantastic. Yeah. Both the children and the parents, because the parents have to, everyone on the system will know we give you plenty of stuff to give feedback on and videos to watch.
That's one of the most common things when we ask after the first 10 lessons, what have you been most surprised by? It's the parents saying, the amount of homework I have, I didn't expect to be so involved.
No, it is a little intense, particularly in the first 2 or 3 weeks. But then it's important to understand that what you're achieving isn't easy. The school system really struggles with this. The education system as a whole has struggled with it for hundreds of years, and so to be turning around these things in a short time isn't easy, and it takes application. So well done. And also, while we're doing it, I want to say thank you to Lydia and her colleagues who also really put their heart into it, and have been achieving fantastic results over the last year or 2, particularly. So it's really exciting, and
it's all a team game.
Yeah, it is. It's a collaboration, and that's how it should be. So. And then we got a few highs from different places. So those who are online, do you want to say hi from wherever you are? So we know. Be interesting to see who's from the craziest town. Yeah. So the children who are listening, they'll be glad to hear that we've had such an incredible response to the place name game that we've decided we're just going to do the place name game as the only game, really, because it's just so much fun, isn't it? Well, right. Before you all run away screaming, no, we're not going to do that. But we are going to try and make it a little bit more fun by putting funnier place names and slightly shorter ones. So send in your place names and maybe we can add those.
Yeah, we've already taken some inspiration from the place names we found on the system.
Yeah,
I've been messaging my colleague Sarah to say, I've just spoken to someone from this place. You should put their place name in because it's going to be great.
So say where you're from. And the other thing I want to say, if there are any children watching at the moment, we are doing prizes today. We love prizes. So we got some T-shirts. I really love these. The ape.
Ape in the cake.
So this is our Go Ape T-shirt.
Yeah.
So we're going to hand out some of those just for a bit of fun. Yeah. So the first one we're going to hand out is I'd really like to know what your favourite games are, so that we don't replace those ones with the place name game. So just send like the 2 or 3 that you think are really good fun, and we'll collect those, because it's always interesting for us to be clear on not just the most favourite, but also the ones which are sort of good too.
Close seconds, close thirds.
And because we're rebuilding the system completely at the moment, and so we need to make sure we get the fun games in there, into the new version. And so we will pick one submission at random for a t-shirt if you send those in over the next few minutes.
Yeah, so just write those in the comments.
If you want to just put it in afterwards, that's fine too. We will just that will get those. So okay, the Easy Read news was the next thing I had on my list. So got 2 bits of news. One is we right now are teaching the Easy Read characters to do some dances, and we're going to start publishing those over the next few weeks and months. And what we'd like to do is have a sort of Easy Read dance in. It's not really a dance competition, but we just share our dances. So it'd be really nice to know from the children whether they, and the parents too, whether they would like to do some Easy Read dances on the channel over the coming weeks and months, and maybe we could do some prizes for some good dances. So if you think that's a good one, say yay, I like dancing. If you don't, say
be honest.
What a crazy idea. Not going to do that. And then the other bit of news we have is we have the incredible 9 Causes of Reading Difficulty by David Morgan and Sarah Forrest in Amazon right now. And so it's full of fascinating stuff, which maybe you'd like to gift to your school or something. So what I'm doing is there will be a super Easy Read discount for parents, so that we're basically giving it to you. But in the next couple of hours, the code EasyRead80 will go live, and that gives you like an 80% discount on the cost of the book. So it's way below our cost. So it's the 9 main causes of reading difficulty. And what I mean, you know the game. If you could buy one and put a little review onto Amazon, we would love you forever. It's a really really good deal. So because we want to obviously get it into people's hands, and the reviews make a huge difference to that. So and it will cost you almost nothing with that discount. So those are our 2 bits of news.
We've had a couple of people saying they really like dancing.
Good.
Tonya and Donna says Kaylin loves crazy dancing. So that's good news. I think 2 is enough.
We're on. We're going to do Easy Read dancing. So
fantastic. And lots of favourite games coming in as well. And it is interesting to see, and we talk about this sometimes, how there's never really agreement, to be honest.
It is amazing, isn't it? I don't think we have a game that isn't disliked by somebody and loved by somebody else. I mean, I don't, except for the place name thing. Actually, the parents often love the place name.
I can really see the benefit,
because it is tough as a reading thing. So it's sort of useful in that way. But all the games like
it's always someone's favourite and it's someone's least favourite.
I can't name one that isn't.
And so it's tough when we have to say, to a parent, oh, I'm really sorry he doesn't like the game, but so many other people absolutely love it.
So should we crack into the questions? So we picked, I mean, we literally got best part of 100 questions. So, I mean, you would be bored to tears if I was going through 100 questions, and we will answer them in a PDF so that you can have a look at those and other people's questions and the answers we got for them. But today we're just going to do like a dozen, or see how we get on with a handful.
Okay.
So
Cool.
First question.
Yeah. So the first one has come from Luca in South Sea. And we also had the same question come from quite a few children. So Isaac, Johan, Albie, Josephine, John, and Hudson. So thanks to you all. And the question is, David, did you struggle at school with the reading?
Yeah, well, the answer is yes. Yeah, I really did. I had lots of, I was really lucky. I had a happy childhood, but I had a couple of bad memories. One was I was like about 2, and I was stood in the sea with my mum, and the rest of the family were out playing in the big waves, and one of those little waves came in and popped me over, and I ended up in the water beside my mother. She didn't know because she was looking out to sea, and there was all the noise of the waves that she wasn't hear me splashing around. And that memory is like drilled into my head, being under the water, not knowing what to do. And eventually, as you can tell, she noticed I was about to float away and pick me up. But bad memories really stick in your head. And that's a sort of survival thing. And so the two things, scary moments and when you've been really stupid, are things which sort of don't go away as memories. I've got plenty of those now because I've been collecting them for 50 years. But the other really tough one I had was learning to read. All the rest of my family just learned to read without a problem. And then I found it really hard. And of course, they couldn't understand what was wrong with David. Was he just not trying? And I can remember my mother's face looking at me, trying to get me to read. And she was sort of so frustrated by it. And it really plagued me for quite a long time. It was probably till, even in my teens, I was in a sort of, in a sort of fast track at school, but still failed my English at 16. And then we're in here in Oxford. I actually applied to Oxford to do engineering, and I got all the questions right, and they marked me down because I didn't tell them why or how I got the answers.
Writing just too much.
Yeah, I just didn't like the writing thing. Yeah. I just did the numbers and said that's the answer. That wasn't that. They weren't happy with
Oxford's
that.
Not having that.
No. we want a bit of philosophy with this. So yeah, I really struggled. And the important thing to know is that you should not worry if it's ever been a struggle, because first of all, we're going to get it sorted. Secondly, the children we're helping on the system are so clever across the board. We have some absolutely brilliant children. I love doing the Skype lessons because they're all so bright, such fun, and so you can go anywhere. You are going to learn to read. You're going to learn to spell. It's not going to be a worry. And then with those critical skills, they are critical skills. If you can't read and you can't write, then it's a lot of options are really cut out for you. But you are going to do that, and then you can choose where you're going to go in life. And that's really important, because one really big tip I got for you is whatever you do in life, you've got to love it, because you're going to do it a lot. So I love working here, and I hope Lydia likes working here. Do you like working here?
I do, don't worry.
Good. Don't want her to go away. So yeah, you want to choose something in your life that you really want to do, but when you're because you're going to do a lot of it, and there are lots of things. And don't think that means you can only do the great things. We had a blocked drain in the street over the last few weeks, and the sewer, so like full of poo. You know how we love poo in Easyread, but there's a full of poo, and these guys came, and it's like their big challenge. They're going to get this stuff out, they're going to clear the blockage. They just loved it, and they were having fun. And so that, every job in it has fun, and so and it can be a challenge, but you must pick something that you're enjoying in life. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I struggle, definitely.
And we wanted to sort of know, because of that, what kinds of jobs the children system are interested in doing in the future. I mean, obviously that might change, and that's absolutely fine, but it's interesting. So if you want to write that in the comments, then please do. We'd love to know. Fantastic. The next question is from Weyer in Vermont, and it's we had similar kinds of questions from Brad, Felicity, Poppy, Patrick, Hugo, Tessa, Georgina, Sam, Logan, Lily, and Jill. So a very popular question, and basically all those questions covered how and why did you invent Easyread?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of, I'll give you a little story to it. So I struggled, as you know, and so, at some point it sort of clicked for me quite late on. I nearly switched from engineering to fine art at university, so I suddenly got into reading, and now I've forgotten about it until I was helping my children learn to read, and it was really interesting how hard it was for them. Obviously, they got some of the same genes as me, and at the same moment, my father set up a charity in the prison system called the Shannon Trust, where we were getting literate inmates to help non-readers learn to read, because they've all got time on their hands, they're in prison, and so many prison inmates can't read. I mean, like 2/3. I mean, it's desperate. And when I say can't read, really can't read. And so we got them teaching each other to read, and they were learning to read really quite quickly. And I said, well, why did they not learn to read at 10 years at school, and then they learned to read in 5 or 6 months here? So that got me. Engineers like to sort of give them a problem, and they're off, fixing and tightening things. So I was thinking about that and thinking, well, there's something going wrong with how they learn to read. So I then started studying it really, and I was doing some reading on neurology at the time, just because it's sort of fun. I've got a book that I was reading. Here it is, The Human Brain. It's probably the most amazing. It's said to be the most incredible thing in the universe. There's probably a bigger brain somewhere in the universe. But anyhow, this is a fabulous book.
There isn't a bigger book.
This is by John Nolte, really great writer, lovely man as well. He was really helpful when I asked him for some stuff. And this book is sort of like the foundation to everything we do, because as an engineer, I say people are trying to learn, and they're learning with their neurons. And so you've got to understand the neurology in order to know how to help them. And so we started doing some stuff, and initially we produced a little book called The Ant in Pink Pants. And so we're trying to make it's a bit sort of, there we go, that's better. It's a little alphabet book, which we developed, and trying to make the alphabet easier with these crazy characters who you now know. So, here's the G, and there's the goat in a boat. And so the idea was to make the letter somewhere that you saw something, and then the person you saw could tell you what the letter was. And then we produced the cover page, which you can see here, which is the ant in pink pants with the images through the text. And when I literally put this together on a myself, and I was looking and thinking, well, that's interesting, because the letters tell one story, and then the images sort of tell the story as well. And could that be helpful for actually reading, not just learning the alphabet? Tested it in the local school. Oh yes, it did. And so that was in like 2001, and so we just basically went from there. So somewhat stumbled on that second bit of the idea, but then we've just been pushing and pushing since then, and launched it as a company in 2008. So before then I was doing it sort of part-time while running another one, and then we've been full on for the last 10 years. And as you can see from the 9 main causes of reading difficulty, it hasn't been completely straightforward. We were helping some people but not others, and we were trying to work out why. And each time we did that, we pushed what we learned back into the system.
Yeah, really cool.
So and why? Well, it's been fun and interesting, and it's a great job. I love it.
Yeah, good. Okay, it's really cool. Those little with the characters over the, because now we present them above, but they're sort of over. Reminds me, do you ever have those little wooden letters that you put on your door as a child?
Oh yeah.
That reminds me of that.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so the next question comes from Emma in Dumfries, and we've also had this from lots of people. Jeremiah, Felicity, Kale, Benjamin, Braden, Zachary, Cherie, Moni, Hudson, Ada, Matteo, Cara, Michelle, Lily, and Rachel. Very popular question, yeah. The age-old question. Who makes the games? Very popular games. Who makes up the games and designs the animations?
Yeah, so very originally, I started making the games. Luckily, those games have now disappeared. They were very basic, but we did produce some. I produced some games initially, and then I was joined by my colleague and friend Matt, who is a techno whiz. He did physics masters at university, and he started coding stuff. Yeah, so he produced a load of games for us. From about 2009, 2010, we started producing more and more games, usually to address one or other issue in the system. So we've been producing games together since then. And one or two have been made by other people. James, who was with us for a while, produced a couple of later ones. But basically, the bulk of it was me and Matt just having a bit of fun, thinking what can we do, and he's been the heart of it. And then the images and the animation. So this original book, I worked with a guy called Robin Evans, really nice guy. We just did images. Although we ended up obviously with 26 initially. We probably went through about 40 different images. He was very long-suffering when I sort of said, no, I don't like that one, or we'd test it and it didn't work, and he did all of those. And since then, other artists have updated them. So some of you will know that the images do occasionally change, and we're just, and then the rhymes, a lot of the rhymes actually came from home, because my wife is a brilliant rhymer, and she's taught our children sort of silly rhymes, sort of just flow out of them quite a lot. And so we were doing a lot of rhyming around the breakfast table to produce all those silly rhymes. And silly stuff is a lot easier to remember than sensible stuff. So we stick with the silly.
I can't wait till one day we start doing them in different languages, and we get to make up a whole new bunch of rhymes.
Yeah, we have
to learn the languages first.
Yeah. So the team in Manila have started doing rhymes in Tagalog, which is the Philippine language. So we're heading that way. Anybody who's got a second language, then share some rhymes with us.
Text characters. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
Cool.
Did you want to?
Okay, yeah. So one thing which we really like, and this is definitely worth a T-shirt, is if the children would like to send in their game ideas. Doesn't have to be right now, but send them in onto the feed when we're finished, and we'll pick one of those for a T-shirt too.
Great. Yeah, fantastic. So the next question comes from Claire in Surrey, and Claire, you're the only one that asked this question.
Yeah. So it's a good one.
In fact, there might have been someone else, but
anyway. I just didn't.
Yeah. So does David and the Easyread team see reading and spelling difficulties, even diagnosed dyslexic, as something that you can reprogram the brain to overcome?
Oh, yes. Yes, we do it all the time. I mean, I said 2,000 children, many of whom have had a dyslexia diagnosis, and they've all been doing well. Yeah. And the brain is essentially plastic. The people who have a stroke, for instance, and they lose a bit of their brain, they can still learn they regain that skill with a lot of hard work sometimes, but they can regain it. And we've all seen that happening now. Funnily enough, 15 years ago, if you said that to a neurologist, they'd say, no, once you're an adult, your brain can't change. It was completely wrong. The brain can always change. And so, yes, once we help a dyslexic child in the right way, they learn to read fine. Often they get to the top of the class. You know, we've had dyslexics win writing prizes and stuff. You should never put a limit on what you can achieve, because it's just a matter of taking the right path.
Okay. Let's go on to the next question.
Yeah, so some of them we're having sort of
yeah. It's quite sort of. It's interesting.
So that's so if what I suggest is you give me the next question, and while I'm doing that, you have a look at the comments.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. Okay, so the next one is so we've got Sierra, who wrote to us to say that her mum is always asking her, David, why does it cost so much?
I'm sorry, Sierra. We would love the system to be. Have a look at the.
Oh yeah. I want to hear a response to this one. It's not fair. I'll listen back.
So we would love the system to be as cheap as possible, and we always have run it as cheap as we can. We started at a super low price. We thought it'd just be a bit of software, and with time we found it was a bit more complicated than that. We needed to be helping, we needed to be making it more complex to deal with problems that we didn't know about when we started. So in the end, we've ended up, having a constant development team. So at the moment, we've got 8 people working on the system, developing the next new stuff, updating stuff that needs changing, and we're constantly getting feedback on that, which we love, and we are always implementing. I was going through our current list with 100 items on it for updates we want to do. We're also rebuilding the entire system from the ground up, because everything changes on the internet all the time, particularly because the internet is sort of quite new. The technology keeps changing, and you have to change with it. So there's the system we used to have all the games in, which is called Flash, is now not allowed to run on most browsers. So we had to rebuild all the games for that. We started rebuilding about 4 or 5 years ago. We're now rebuilding them again to take forward into the new sort of, so that it can go mobile. For instance, at the moment we don't really work on a phone or a tablet, as you know. We need to. My vision is for Easyread to be available on a phone in an African village in the next 5-10 years. Do you know what I mean? So we need to be developing all the time. So we're spending a lot of money on that. We're doing research. You've seen there's some research we've done on the site that is surprisingly expensive. We are also having to promote ourselves now. Everybody who comes to us has somehow heard about us, and whatever way you cut it, it sort of costs money to achieve that, and so we're spending a lot of money there. So effectively, we run the pricing at what we need in order to run the organization. And most things you do where you're getting a lot of support like we do, you've got a sophisticated thing with, most of those things are actually more expensive. If you go to a solicitor, you'll find we're really good value. And all these people charge huge amounts of money. We try to keep it as lean as we can, but it is what it is. The interesting thing is when you reverse the view of it. And I'm really interested, I'm going to do a little straw poll for the parents listening as to what it costs not learning to read. I was just doing some reading on this the other day. It is really surprising. So let's see who can get closest to the number of dollars over a working lifetime it would cost a child who could go to university but leaves school not really reading very well. And by the way, most 7 or 8 year olds who are struggling with their reading, really struggling with it, generally do leave school unable to read. It's a sort of bit of a myth, the idea that you have late bloomers, that 9 is the right time for them to learn to read. It doesn't really happen that way. The data shows that. So anybody got an idea of what the lifetime lost income is for not learning to read? All I can say is it makes the cost of Easyread look very good value. So is there any things that we should pick up on?
The other thing to add is just sort of our view of kind of always getting it right and delivering for every.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's really hard because we're trying to balance what we put in with the cost, that sort of thing. But where I get to is like our job really is to get it right for the child, and then somehow we need to find a way for that to be paid for. It might be the school helping if a parent is struggling to, or it might be a grandparent, and we have that happening, both of those things happening quite a bit. Eventually, I'm hoping we get to the point in society where the idea that we sort of accept a child going through second and third and fourth grade not learning to read is just like, well, no, we don't accept that. If you imagine running a train company where, you know, the fifth carriage just gets left at the station and the other four go off, and the passengers on the fifth carriage just get left there. And no, you're not allowed out of the carriage. You know, you've got to stay in the train, but the train's not going to go anywhere. But you've got to stay in the train. It's like, of course, that wouldn't be accepted. And yet we have 1 in 5 children going through school unable to read. Now, of course, everyone's trying their best to get to fix that. But now that we've got the technology and we can show that to get it right, I really hope that over the next few years it just gets accepted that everybody learns to read.
Good. Okay. And so thanks to everyone who's sent in their favourite games and the responses to what you want to be when you grow up. Got rocket science. Sam wants to go into.
Excellent.
That would be. David, I might have to quit if I could become a rocket scientist. But,
you want to become an astronaut?
I think going down the languages route is not going to really happen. Johan wants to run a rescue station. That's cool. And then we've had a few questions about sort of wish list things, which we're going to sort of. There were a few questions actually that came in about on the messaging about what you'd like to be in the system, which David will reply to afterwards, and and then because we were talking about the trainer text characters, Katie wanted to know if you have a favourite
trainer text character. I have loved them all actually. We're just sort of redrawing some of them for the new system we're working on, and the new artists sort of changed a couple of them. I really can't change the bear with long hair. You know, he's been around too long.
I know, it's emotional. I can answer. The kangaroos reading the news. It's a clear winner. I just find that really sweet. The little kangaroos reading the news. It
would have been great to have grown up in a little patch. Reading. I like the ape. I like the egg. There's some sweet ones. Robin did a really great job.
And Katie would like to be a doctor. That's really cool. Excellent. Reading skills would be really helpful for that.
Definitely.
And then there's Charlie.
You've got to read.
Who wants to build houses. That's great as well. Useful when you can build your own house. That'd be the dream. Just do it exactly as you want it. Anyway, we can move on. So Holly from Nottingham asked a brilliant question. And this is inspired by one of the books, so it might sound a bit odd if you haven't read that particular book on the second shelf. But would David eat chocolate-covered garlic balls for breakfast like Eleanor Roosevelt?
I'm wondering about
I'm trying to
the
imagine
Roosevelt's marriage, because I love garlic and I love chocolate, and garlic and chocolate could be good. It's surprising what's good. My problem is that I quite like occasionally to kiss my wife, and if I'd eaten garlic for breakfast, I think that might be off the
problematic.
The children are probably going, oh my god, kissing. But so I think I'm going to keep garlic for the evening when she's eating garlic tea and chocolate. I have found, shockingly, that chocolate cake is surprisingly good for breakfast.
Revelation.
But not every day.
No, it's one of those things. But I particularly like that crazy fact. So
how did that occur to her? Quite weird. Do you think she cooked the garlic?
Did she make them specially?
I don't know.
We need a crazy facts book that goes into more detail, David. All right. Next question is from Brooklyn, who's from Winchester. And that is, why do we have to reread stuff?
I know, it's sort of not, it doesn't feel like the best fun bit, does it? The reason is, again, the neurons. So when you do the working the words out, Brooklyn, then you're your brain is working in one way, which is important, and you've got to work out the words. Then when you do the reread, your brain is sort of flowing with it, and it floats it into your subconscious. So the next time you see those words, it makes them a lot easier to remember. Also, particularly if your parent goes, yeah, you got it. And that's because when you get an affirmation like that, you get this little spike in dopamine, which fixes the memory. So dopamine is a very important drug in the body for memory. So your parent going, yeah, whenever you get things right is really helpful for that. But the reread just floats it in. And so you will actually end up doing less reading practice before reading becomes easy if you do that reread. If you don't do the reread, you'll be doing the decoding word by word for much longer. So I promise you, Brooklyn, that it'll save you time and effort if you just do the reread. Go for it. And it's quite easy. You just read the words.
Yeah. And also it can be exciting when you go back through, when you see a child going back through and getting it really fluent, when you've just seen them struggling with that word, and it just goes to show that there's something automatic going on up there. It's really cool. I just wanted to give you this question as well from Lisa, who's written in. She said, is the program suitable for someone who can read but reads slow? Probably depends what you mean by can read. That's the really crucial thing.
So it depends on what's causing the slowness. So the big thing we're looking for is when somebody, so if it's slow because somebody's struggling to decode the words, definitely, because we can make that decoding easier, so you decode more, and then it gets faster, and once you get good at it. Also, sometimes people are really slow because they're hunting around for clues rather than just decoding. They're actually sort of doing a guessing game using other words to try and sort of work out what the next word is. And so if they're doing that, then what we're doing will definitely help. And so generally, it's definitely. Basically, so long as we're seeing the patterns that we normally see, then we can always help.
Yeah, brilliant. Good. I think that's helpful. The next question is from, I'm not sure if it's Elena, E-L-E-N-A. We have an Eleanor with an O-R in the office, and she does struggle with getting it pronounced correctly.
Well, for her.
Yeah.
It's always a tough thing with names, because
it's different for everyone.
Individual thing, so anyhow.
You train a text. That.
There was a time when I was going to do a thing where we were giving a welcome to each child in the system as they came in. And so we started looking at it, and I found that at the time there had been 6,000 children on the system, and we had 2,000 different names already out of 6,000. I thought, I don't think I'm going to record 6,000 names.
Yeah.
So,
bravo to the parents for your name giving skills, because there's some excellent names. It's lovely. She's from Trenton, and she asks, should we ask the teacher at school to retest our son to see if he has improved? That's a really good question.
That's a really interesting one. So there's two halves to this. One is reading age tests. So if I just to quickly address that, the important thing with reading age tests is to understand that there is no magic sort of measure for somebody's reading age. All we have is tests which can measure how good a child is at the test. And then they try to map the average sort of ability at that test at each age, presuming that the children they're testing are learning to read normally. And then they say, so if you're this good at that test, that you're reading age X. It's not actually true. All you're measuring is how good you are at that test. And that causes us a few problems, because quite often the tests are based on how quickly you're reading. Now, anybody who's on the system knows that we are focused on getting accuracy first and then fluency. Because if you don't read accurately, you're not reading. it's really important to understand that you know, if you've got an airline pilot who hasn't read the manual accurately, you're in a lot of danger.
Even if the plane goes really fast.
Yeah. And you know, the core to reading is comprehension, and comprehension should, I mean, we all make mistakes when we're reading, but comprehension should be like every word. Now, so if a reading test is all about speed, not accuracy, then when we get a child to really look at each word and get them right, of course they're going slower. And so quite often, if they are tested in the early days of Easyread, then they will seem to have gone backwards in their reading age. And of course that can be worrying if a teacher says, you know, your child's getting worse at reading, not better. That's of course upsetting. And you know, 2 or 3 of those 4 difficulties that we've had over the last 12 months, that's what it was caused by, is that the school suddenly said, you've achieved nothing in the last 3-4 months, you know. And they said, really? And walked away. And so I'm always nervous about reading age tests. They don't really mean what they say on the tin. So,
sorry, I was just saying, and I think that's one reason that we sort of value so much the qualitative analysis as well of what's going on for each child, because we obviously use data in the system, and that's a big indication. But sometimes, you know, and this is why we just insist on the phone calls with every parent, because even if it's only occasionally, sometimes it all looks, so all the green lights when you're looking at the data, and you get on the phone and something becomes apparent from, we need to hear that description of what's actually happening for each child when they're reading. And that's what gives us the indication.
It's absolutely true, is that we you know, we insist on having those phone calls, because it's only when you're chatting about what somebody's seeing and you get little indicate, people often think things are fine, and then they mention some little thing which we're saying, oh, hang on a second, just describe that a bit more, and it's very important for us. So the real thing here is that one is what you see with your eyes is true. So if you're seeing growing confidence and growing accuracy and growing fluency, that person is improving. What is quite hard is that when you're with somebody every day, the incremental change is obviously very small. You know, we don't make leaps and bounds every day and so there's a couple of things. One is you've got to have a memory of what it was like when we started. And try and compare to that. The other thing that is really important is to look at what is right rather than what is wrong. So it's very easy to look at the errors and say, I'm seeing errors, I'm worried about the errors, and that's quite natural. But actually, we're on a journey, we're going up a hill. And if you keep walking up a hill, you go up. You know, you don't sort of particularly notice it, but it's quite interesting. Anybody who's done some hill walking will know that you're sort of walking up and walking up and walking up and sort of chatting, and then you stop for a little break, a moment where they sort of give you, and you look down at the valley and think, wow, we've actually come up a long way. That's amazing. And we were just taking little steps all the way. It's quite hard to sort of be measuring that small incremental change. What you don't want to be doing is focusing on the remaining bit of the hill. Because that can be sort of is not the right way to view it. That you want to notice your gain rather than what's still to do. Because the truth is that there will always be mistakes. You know, I make mistakes with reading and spelling, and pretty much everybody does. And as a child, you know, so we measure in this, particularly for instance in the spelling, our target is always, you know, like about 85% correct towards the end of the course. Of course, you know, one expects to be getting to, you know, above 99% correct when you're a good writer, but we're on a journey, you know, and if you've gone from 50% correct to 85% correct, that is really good. And so that's the thing to be looking at, and be very nervous about getting a reading assessment at school, because it's not always telling you the right thing. Yeah. Good. That's really interesting. So the next question is from Beth, who's from Kent. And she said, what is Mole Whacker designed to help with? And
Mole Whacker did come up a few times as a favourite game, I have to say.
Yeah.
It is good, isn't it? I mean,
it is quite fun.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, I think Mole Whacker and Fighter Mission have to be.
I remember the other day they'd done a little update in the IT team, and so Matt said, "Oh, do you mind just testing one of the lessons?" I was like, "Sure, okay, yeah." There I'm whacking my moles, having a great time. So I was like, "Sure."
We had somebody come by the other day who's Super Search was her thing, and she was just incredible.
Yeah.
She could, as soon as the thing went up, she said, "It's there." You know? I was left in her dust. So Mole Whacker, Mole Whacker is one of our eye tracking things. So you're absolutely right. No words involved, no letters even. But the thing is that the eyes, when you go to the optician, they test each eye individually. So they cover up one and test that one and do it like that. They don't actually test how the eyes work together. And most of the time, you're looking at things in the distance. So the eyes are sort of more or less parallel. But then when you are at arm's distance, the eyes have got to come slightly together. And it's actually, quite hard. It's like crossing your eyes is hard. That for a lot of children, particularly who haven't practiced it, focusing at something at this sort of distance is hard. So we are helping with that, because if your eyes don't look at the same place, so when the eyes are working well, then the two images sit over each other in the cortex, and you can see a clear image. But if they're slightly mismatched, then you get this sort of muddy, you get a mess really, and it's much harder for the visual cortex to see something clearly. And so the letters get a bit blurred and tiring. A lot of children will say it's tiring to look at the text, particularly if it's small. So we're doing quite a bit. Some of you will have been given our magic finger tracking exercise, where you just sort of follow your finger like this, and we call it ninja eye tracking, and it is miraculous. If you do that a lot, and it's only for 10, 15 seconds. You just do about 10 times around and back. If you do that again and again during the day, literally in a week or so, you become ninja sharp with your eye tracking. We've had people who can only read really big text, like 100 points in the system, and they go right down to 10, 15 points, to the point where, I'm struggling to sit just by doing that exercise. So it's really powerful. And so Mole Whacker is part of that mix, and there's Eggy. Is an old game we used to run. It's one of the ones in this Flash system, so it may not work on every computer, but Eggy's in the extra games. That sort of is another one. And really anything you do, which is getting your eyes working like this, keep your head still, get your eyes working, you'll find it's actually quite tiring. You can feel it just doing it for a few seconds, but it's really good for the eyes.
Yeah, definitely. Good. Fantastic. Oh, I wondered if we wanted to jump in with that. We had a couple of for the question about how much do you think is lost in income if you don't learn to read. So we had Emma's thought it would be 880k GBP.
Not bad.
And then Brandy said $2 million.
Well, we're bracketed then.
Yeah.
So the figure I got from the US government the other day was $1.6 million. That's the
good
average earnings difference between somebody who leaves school without qualifications, which you will if you can't read, basically, against somebody who has got a university degree. And what I'd say is I haven't seen a child in the system potentially ever who I didn't think who couldn't get a university degree. All the children are sort of super bright. I just don't come across stupid children. I don't think they exist. And there are no lazy children either.
Yeah.
Children can seem sometimes a child is resistant to doing something, which is sort of different because from being lazy. I know I became lazy at some point with some things, but but I think it's sort of like an adult thing.
Yeah.
Being lazy children just like running
normally
around.
a basis of finding something difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's we all are a little resistant to the stuff that we find hard. And as an adult, we say, "Oh, I just don't really like doing that, so I'm not going to do it." But as a child, you don't always have that choice, and it can seem like laziness. So yeah, $1.6 million is the cost of not learning to read.
That's a lot
on average.
Yeah. Good. Great question from Iona, which has come in, which is, why did we... Oh, she's from London. Why did we invent reading? Ooh.
Yeah. Right, you're in a dangerous zone here because this is one of my things. I've got a really good book here, The Story of Writing. So if you're settled in, I'll start from page 1. So writing, the beginning of writing happened sort of somewhere like tens of thousands of years ago. And what it was when you had a sheep, you might give your sheep to somebody and you wanted to record, but you'd given them a sheep. And so they would give you a rock with a notch on it, saying, yeah, okay, I mark this rock to say you give me one sheep. And then you might send a bunch of stuff to somebody. So you'd say, okay, I'm going to do 5 sheep. And you'd send your sheep with somebody. And you could send 5 rocks as like you're giving your sheep to somebody who isn't you. They're going off to the village to sell it to Mr. Sheepman in the village, and you want the sheepman to know how many sheep should have come with the guy you sent them with. And so what they do is they make a little pouch, and put the 5 sheep rocks in. And the sheepman in the village would break open in the pouch and say, okay, 5 sheep rocks, 5 sheep, you're good to go. You brought the right number of sheep. But of course, they would always have to break open the pouch, and then there's, you got these rocks everywhere. So they started notching on the outside of the pouch that they'd made. There's a little clay pouch, like a sort of, very like a money pig. Actually, if you think about it, it's the same sort of principle of putting money into a pig. You've got to break the pig to get it open. And they're thinking, well, that's annoying because we want to keep the sheep rocks in the pouch. So they started writing on the outside of the pouch, 5 sheep rocks in the pouch. And then they thought, well, actually, we don't really need the rocks inside because we're marking it on the outside. How many rocks are inside? Well, we'll just use the pouch. And so they flattened the pouch into a clay tablet, and they would write, 5 sheep rocks, Jim, and that would go to the sheep man, and then somebody realized that you could take like your symbol for a sheep and make it represent the sh sound. So then they started making little, or they'd write little images like pictures of things. And so the very first languages were based on taking the image of something and using the sound of the beginning of the image.
So it's like reverse trainer text.
Funnily enough, it's like trainer text, isn't it?
Oh.
So like the letter A was originally the image of an aleph, which is an ox in Phoenician. And so the original alphabets worked on exactly the same system as the trainer text does, the trainer text characters. It's just that over hundreds of years, it got a bit muddied. So we've sort of gone back to square one to make it simpler again.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So basically, reading started because people wanted to keep accounts. It's all about the money, isn't it? And so they wanted to know how much they were owed, so they did that. And of course, since then, it's been found that reading and writing is really quite useful.
Turned out to be pretty useful.
So everything you see around you really is based now on the fact that people can read and write, and you can learn from somebody who isn't there. Without reading and writing, to learn something, you've got to be told it by somebody. Once you can read and write, you can learn from anybody all over the world. All through history. So it's an astonishing technology, that you can learn what Caesar, Julius Caesar thought about life. He was an interesting man, and you can hear his very words. He's a really nice writer if you want to read some old stuff. And so that's why we now read and write. You'll love it once you get into it. As you know, I wasn't a great read and writer, but love it now. The Lou is full of magazines, as Lydia can confirm. My wife goes mad because every time I get to Lou at home, it's like half an hour, 40 minutes before I reappear, because I just get stuck reading. It's just lovely.
You could try keeping the books in a different room.
I do have books in other rooms too. Yeah. I've got some up here.
It's a very specific kind of book which ends up in a loo, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's why reading is good. You'll love it once you're into it.
Absolutely.
And stories. You can read good stories if you're into it.
Fantastic.
What do we got?
Good. Next one is Huxley. Is from Huxley from York. And the question is, do all children improve with spelling with the same method? Yeah. So that's it's a great question, because you'll know at school you do these spelling lists, and that seems like the obvious way to learn to spell. The good news is you don't need to do spelling lists in order to learn to spell. What we found was that when we were helping people with their reading, they just started learning to spell, without us doing any spelling work. So we're looking at it thinking, oh, that's really interesting. They just naturally start to spell. So yes, when you learn to read the right way, you're building this sort of like mapping in your subconscious, which is all these letter patterns and sounds and in the different words and how they all relate. And eventually, you've been laying that down for the reading, and then you can use it for the spelling. And you'll just start to feel what the right spelling is without really knowing why or how. And it's a gradual process. So initially you start to get more words right, and then when you're making mistakes, usually the mistakes are just a letter or two out or that sort of thing, instead of those sort of, we call it Frankenstein spelling, that those of us who have struggled to spell do, when you just don't know what the word is, but you start sticking letters together and hope for the best. Suddenly you'll start to sort of feel the spelling. And the interesting thing is that when you're writing, when you're good at reading and writing, when you're writing with a pen or on the keyboard, you're not thinking at all about the letters. They just appear. When I'm typing on the keyboard, I don't even know where the keys are. And yet my brain is able to make words appear on the screen. So it's all a subconscious process. And yes, in the third phase of the system, we do a lot of spelling practice to accelerate it. But the core is in the reading. Once you can read the right way, then the spelling sort of happens naturally, without having to do any hard work, which is really nice. Yeah, that's really cool. Good. And then, this is our last sort of question that we've had from the last few days, and it's from LaShaw, who's from New York. And it's, will you create easy math too? Well, if we did it, it would be easy maths.
Yeah. I hope I had time in life to do that, definitely. Right now, we're just so busy trying to get the reading sorted. But at some moments, I'm trying to make myself sort of redundant, and the team is doing more and more without me, at which point I might just suddenly get into the maths, which would be really good fun, because I love maths, and it'd be really interesting to see, what's how we can do that. Interestingly, it's a little harder when you're naturally good at something to teach it than when you struggle with something, because when you struggle, you understand why somebody can struggle. When it's sort of like natural for you to understand something, it's like, what do you mean you can't add two numbers? Why not? It's like
that's why it's hard for parents who've not struggled as well, and they're sort of looking. Okay, I don't understand.
Yeah, I do too. It is baffling, and it's it's something elemental which you don't have to think about doing. It's hard to understand how somebody is finding it hard, and it's easy. I know I had struggled to learn to read, and I still thought my children were trying hard.
Learned a lot from doing this.
Yeah, yeah. I've learned with time. I look back with horror. That I remember thinking that they'll probably learn to read, but probably never want to read another book by the time we finish this process, because it was actually, I have to say, it was tough. We had a tough time with it, and I'm glad that we were able to make it easier now with the technology we've developed than in the old days.
Yeah.
But yeah, easy math. I have. I've been keeping an eye on it. I'd love to do that, but probably not in the very short term.
We're quite busy.
It is busy. Life's so busy
with the reading stuff. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So, is there anything else that we need to answer while we're on the line? Because I think with the rest, I think we've done. Oh my goodness, we've done a whole hour. Congratulations to anybody
who's stayed
with us for an hour.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for all your questions. And one thing I got for you, I thought it'd be fun to give you a question. Ooh. So for those of you on the system, I've got a conundrum for you. So I want you to imagine that you're driving across the northern United States in the midwinter, or Canada, and it's freezing cold, and you're about 22, 23, and you're in a little two-seater sports car. And you are driving through the night, and you come across a car accident, and on the side of the road, you're in the middle of nowhere. And in that car, luckily everyone's got out and they're all alive, but the car is, in flames and, in the snow. And so you stop, and on the side of the road, there are three people. One is a guy who has got hurt in the car accident and, really needs to get to hospital quite fast. The second person is somebody who saved your life last year, and you were just about to go over the Niagara waterfall, and he leapt in, grabbed you, a big risk to himself, and dragged you to the side and saved your life. And the third person, and I haven't got an explanation as to exactly how you know this, but you look at that third person and know that they are the love of your life, that they're the person that you should live with for the next 50, 60 years. But you've only got a two-seater sports car. And it's a freezing night. You got one coat, one good coat. The people in the other car, perhaps mistakenly, had not put any coats. Maybe their coats got burnt in the car. They got no coats. They were freezing on the side of the road. You got a tricky choice to make. So what? Anybody who can send in their, particularly if a child can come, what do you do in that situation? Who do you choose? What do you choose to do?
This is getting deep.
It's a little conundrum for you to ponder. It's a really interesting one, and it has a little. I got this wrong, so I'm not saying there is an answer to this, and it's a really good one. It's a really interesting one, and it takes a little bit of thought.
Oh gosh!
So any child who can give me the happy answer will definitely get a T-shirt, because it's quite tricky to work it out. So send in the answers when you've got a moment, and I think we're just about done, aren't we?
I think we have. No one's answered the question yet, but Megan says my son would rescue the injured person.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. That was my answer. I'm afraid we're both wrong.
It's not the best thing to do.
There is a better answer, yeah.
Oh gosh. I feel like we can't leave it. Can we leave it without saying what the real answer is? The right answer is?
Well, I think it's fun to work it out.
Okay,
we will get the answer. We'll give the answer.
Yeah, in a few days.
But I'll give you a few moments. I rushed to an answer, and I felt the injured person. You had to get them to hospital, but it's a freezing night, and so you're leaving two people in the night in the freezing cold. So that's and of course the love of your life as well, and this guy who saved your life, and he might die in the snow. So, but there's a solution.
Okay.
Yeah.
You tell me the answer after.
I will tell you the answer.
I need to know.
Thank you, Paula, for very nice comments, and
yes, some really nice.
Well done, Sophia, for it. Yeah, lesson 20 is early.
Yeah.
And somebody asked, by the way, how long it takes. It's one of those questions where there's this huge range, actually, for all sorts of reasons. And so we can give an average, but it doesn't sort of mean anything. It's really about the individual child. But the key breakthrough tends to come between lesson 60 and 90. So you're on the right base there, and then it sometimes sometimes you're sort of done. Sometimes it takes quite a bit of practice to get to the point where you're thinking we don't need this anymore. So it varies.
Yeah.
But well done for getting a good start.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen, as well, for just saying how Macy's doing, and congratulations to Macy. She's doing
reading's amazing. Yay!
Yes,
that's what we love.
Really good. Yeah, we love to see that. And yeah, I think I've been having a look through the comments as well as we're going through, and there are definitely a few that we'll send over replies to at least in the next few days, and we hope more people will be watching it back as well and tiling in.
Yeah, so we'll put up the video, and we'll send the answers to
the questions. Yeah.
Good.
So thanks for
anyhow. Well, this has been
being
fun.
A part of our first Facebook Live.
And it seems to have worked.
Yeah.
Which is good.
So. Yeah.
And have a lovely weekend, everybody. And if an Australian is watching this, then we'll do one in Australia sometime.
Shout out to the Australians and New Zealanders who I tend to message and call. So really sorry that they couldn't be on your time.
But I'm going to Manila next year, so we can do one.
Good idea.
Do one for the Australians maybe when I'm there.
Yeah,
that'll be fun.
Nice.
Excellent. Well, we'll wish you well, and we'll look forward to interacting over the next few weeks, and then it's going to be Christmas. Hope everyone's winding up for a great Christmas.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.